What's up, everybody? Back again today. This is the third freaking time I've been back online. I think that's a record. But I am like super excited about this painting. Uh-oh. We lost Droid Cam. God damn it. I knew something was gonna happen. What's going on here? Sorry, we've got technical difficulties once again. All right, there we go. I don't know why that happened. And of course, everything's fucked up now. Great. Oh wait, that's not what I wanted. Oh God, no. Why haven't I think I done fucked it. Dude, where's the fucking focus? Huh? Dude, I'm so confused. Did they like update this app or something? Oh, it's me. Wrong one. Oh, there it is. What? Dude, that is, but that's weird. That was very strange. Okay, well, I mean, it wouldn't be one of my streams without it being an absolute. Why is it so bright now? Absolute insanity. Okay, that is so bright. I don't think anybody can even see what the hell is going on. Let's see. Color correction. Let's try to fucking bring it three. Doesn't look like it's doing anything. Is it? Turn the contrast up. Is my hand yellow yet? Okay, we're good, we're good. Close. Alright, so that's I feel like you can't see it. Um let's see. Brightness down. Hands are yellow. Contrast up. No, blown out. Oh, I fucked it now. Here, let me default it. Um, Gamma? That's a little bit better, actually. Contrast, gamma, brightness. Okay. I think that's as much as I'm gonna fuck with it. I think that's okay. Oh, okay. Oh, right. So if nobody's been following along today, this new painting is it is a stream painting, and I'm only working on this thing um on stream. Like, I am only gonna work on this on stream. I'm actually really excited about this. So, I'm gonna be working on this right now and putting um watching some YouTube videos. But if you do stop by, thank you. I really appreciate it. The last stream I did introduce a new thing. It's good bad man stuff to check out. And I am gonna go over the new ones right now. Alright, let me get it up. Okay, so oh damn it. Alright. So the first thing is music, and it's the hardest button to button by the white stripes. And then for movie, what the heck? We've got Cloud Atlas. Okay. And then for TV slash YouTube, I'm going with Asmongold because I'll be honest, I watch a lot of him, and he's honestly the one that got me to want to start streaming because why not? All right. And then for books, Michael Crichton's Next. Okay. All right. I'm going to pin that. I can never spell his last name right. Crichton. Okay. All right. I'm going to pin this in the comments again. And feel free to check it out and let me know if what you think. Okay. Chat in manually. All right. Cool. So let's see. Oh shit. Okay, let's watch some vetted. All right. Shout out to Patrick on vetted.
All right, betters, I have an awesome video for y'all today. A bunch of y'all have been telling me to make a video about this, so here we go. I'm going to be presenting a new podcast that was just, well, I guess it wasn't just released. It was released quite a bit ago back in December, but I'm just now hearing about it. And it features Hal Puthoff and someone else that we'll get to a little bit later, talking about UFOs, right? In a way that I haven't heard really Hal Puthoff talk. The technology, right? The behind it, UFO technology, right? Honestly, this was such an amazing podcast. I'll put a link in the description to the full episode. And of course, make sure to stay to the end because I've got a special surprise from someone I hadn't heard from before who apparently has been reverse engineering metamaterials that he claims are extraterrestrial. So make sure to stay to the end for that clip. I don't even know what to think about it, y'all. It's honestly mind-blowing. Now, before we get to this first clip, I do want to tell you guys about today's sponsor. All right, y'all, let's talk about the sponsor of today's video, Straight Arrow News. All right, you can use this link down below right here on the screen, san.com/vetted, VETTED. Sign up today. It's free to join. Okay, you can get the app if you have an iPhone, Android phone, you know, tablet, whatever, or just on your desktop. Really easy to use, just straightforward. It's free to use, and you basically just get unbiased, straightforward news, right? Not left-leaning, not right-leaning, just straightforward, okay? This is the news. Here's the facts. Make up your own mind. I absolutely love the site. It totally fits with what we're doing here at Vetted, and there couldn't be a better sponsor. Honestly, I hope they stay with us because I actually use this product, and I love telling y'all about something that I personally use myself, to be honest with you. Again, free to use, right? Just use the link below. There's one in the description or the top pinned comment of this YouTube video, or again, just use the website on the screen, san.com/vetted. Go sign up. Really easy. Look, let's just take a look at it, right? This is what you're getting. They got videos, they got articles, all independent journalists who are just providing the news, okay? No BS, no nothing else. I love it. Again, it's something I use. That's probably the best part about it. It's actually something I use, and you can get everything the way you want it, y'all. So I highly recommend checking out this site, san.com/vetted. Check it out today. Peace. Let's get to this first clip from Hal Puthoff talking about UFOs, again, in a way I just haven't heard before.
But one thing I can add is, which chimes right in with what he was talking about with curved space, is that as part of the UAP program for the Defense Intelligence Agency, you hear pilots saying, "Oh my God, what we're seeing just way beyond our physics." But it turns out that's not really a true statement. It's, as Larry said, it may be beyond our engineering, but it's not necessarily beyond our physics. And so I had the experience of making a list of all the weird things that had been claimed to have been observed on one side of a piece of paper. And then on the other side of the piece of paper, say, if I could engineer Einstein's equations of general relativity the way we engineer Maxwell's equations for electromagnetism. What kind of effects would I would see? And it turns out that across that piece of paper, you can get a one-to-one correspondence. So I think that actually our understanding of some of the far out aspects of observations of UAP fall within a realm that we can understand. And so then that provides motivation for saying, okay, well, then how can we find a way, engineering wise, to move into that band? Well, we've got a long way to go, but at least we have a direction to go.
So that's interesting, right? And I've got another part to this clip, so stay with me here. But right, typically you hear that, right, from what he said at the very beginning of that clip, essentially that, right, this isn't like new physics we don't understand, just more engineering we don't understand, right? So it's not like new physics, it's just engineering we're not capable of. And that's definitely a diversion from what is normally said, because that's what you hear all the time. Oh, I'm seeing new physics, all these things, right? I just found that interesting, right? Amongst other things that he said, right? Make sure to leave comments down below of what you think. Now, let's get to the second part of this clip, because it's equally as fascinating.
If you wouldn't, I mean, obviously, there's so much of this, and we've got so many people who have seen a wide number of really interesting observations that pertain to a whole expanse of things in terms of advanced, whether you want to call it advanced physics, anomalous phenomena. Some of that would fit in the UAP side of things with advanced craft or other energy phenomena. Other would be in different realms, right, of what's interesting. I kind of think about, well, it's almost like if we were experiencing static electricity before electricity was harnessed, or if there was some phenomena that so many people were seeing pieces of it, but maybe not the whole thing. And there wasn't that fully understood and acknowledged explanation of this is just how it fits into our framework of the universe or physics or chemistry, whatever it is. When you talk about those weird things on the left-hand side that then sync up with engineering Einstein's equations, what are some of those weird things on the left-hand side that are discussable?
Well, for example, someone approaches a craft that's of a certain size, and then when they get inside, it's as big as a football field. Well, how does that happen? Well, it turns out that one of the predictions of your engineering Einstein's equations, you could have that happen. Another example would be when a person on the ground sees a craft come along and suddenly do a 90-degree turn at Mach 10, you say, how could anybody survive that if there were many beings inside? However, if you look at the engineering of general relativity, you find out that under certain conditions, time is running much faster in the ship that's being engineered than it's running outside. And so they just take a leisurely turn. Of course, when they look out at the people on the ground, they all seem to be in slow motion. So what looks like an unbelievable turn to us can be a rather leisurely turn from those who are inside. Other aspects, military people who've gotten too close to powered up craft will often get, or worse yet, radiation sickness. And so it turns out that when, again, you're looking at the equations of general relativity, under these conditions of having advanced propulsion, it turns out you get a blue shift in all the frequencies. And so ordinary black body radiation coming off the heat of the craft, which ordinarily would not be particularly harmful, if it gets blue shifted up into the UV and even beyond that into soft X-rays, well, then suddenly you can be harmed by that. So again, there's an example where we see an observation and we can link it back to the physics. And there are just a whole number of those.
Yeah, and those are really, are there any others that you think are, I mean, I think it's a good part of the reason that we're discussing this so much now is that not everybody has had all of these observations that you've mentioned are public, right? These are all things that I've We've heard so many people who have been there, seen it firsthand, and there's books, there's podcasts, there's testimony to Congress, all these things. Those three examples you just gave are shareable, but at the same time, it's not something that's in Physics 101. It's not something that many people haven't actually been exposed to it. So considering that there are engineers, scientists, people who frame out, whether as investors or as funders, what should we be digging into? What are some of these other things on the left-hand side of the sheet of paper, the unusual things that you think scientists or investors should be taking note of, in addition to the one you've shared?
Well, in addition, for example, strength of materials. It turns out that the material bonds get blue shifted also. So that means that a craft like that with material bonds blue shifted could go into the water,
I was measuring
go into land, and not come apart, because to those that are there, the rest of the world looks like butter. And so you're able to go right on through. So hardening of materials under these warped space-time conditions is another element that you could pursue. So really, all these fall in line in a very straightforward way. And by the way, it has been accepted in physics. I put together a whole list of all of that and what the consequences are in general relativity. And I published a paper in the Journal of the British Interplanetary Society. So this stuff is making it into the physics journals, if you know where to dig.
And I'm sure this is going to be a go-to read for anybody listening who cares about things like transmedium interactions or non-interactions with mass. So that ability of something to, I think what you're referring to on the observational science side is when we hear about these craft that are going from 80,000 feet to sea level in less than a second on some of these things, and I'm not sure what the speed is when they're going into water, but they're not hitting it. They're just, there's not that impact one would expect based on speed. So that kind of transmedium transport. So what is that journal? What's the date on that? Journal of British, what is it?
The Journal of the British Interplanetary Society. Lily,
seen it?
If I could dig that up in a hurry.
We can always get back to you on that. You can get back to you after.
I'll have to dig it up. Yeah.
All right. So Hal Puthoff, man, holy smokes, right? There's a lot there to unpack, and that is absolutely a diamond in the rough there as far as podcasts go. Again, I'll put a link in the description. Please go check out the full podcast. It is almost 3 hours long, and just
the fuck was
honestly, there's so much I could have included in today's video about it. But I highly recommend going and listening to that full podcast if you're interested in this.
In my head.
Now, let's get to this second part that I told you about at the very beginning that you'd want to stick around
like an
for.
Old truck
Because it's someone new in the field that I
ear.
hadn't heard of before, to be honest with you,
That's
and maybe
weird.
you haven't either. His name is Richard Banderick, and he is the CEO of Field Propulsion Technologies, Inc., focused on developing the next generation of propellantless spacecraft propulsion systems. As you can see here from his website, right, Field Propulsion Technologies, Inc., they got that picture of this electric spacecraft, which is absolutely just mind-blowing. What is that thing? Holy cow. It looks straight out of a movie. And here's some of his contracts, right? This guy's clearly have been working on it. He's got some patents here that you can check out. Again, I'll put links in the description. Feel free to go check all that stuff out. He clearly is, part of this conversation. And what he has to say is, it's mind-blowing. But before we get to that, let me just kind of explain a little bit what field propulsion, it's talked about like this. Field propulsion is the concept of spacecraft propulsion where no propellant is necessary, but instead momentum of the spacecraft is changed by the interaction of the spacecraft with external force fields, such as gravitational and magnetic fields from stars and planets. Proposed drives that use field propulsion are often called a reactionless or propellantless drive. Now, that can also be taken as, in space, you'll see craft, you've seen it in movies, whatever, how we got to the moon. They'll typically go around a planet and then slingshot out, right? Using the gravitational field as a way to push forward, right, and save gas, if you will, right? So that's part of it, but there's also much more to it, right? And what Richard is about to say here in this next clip is dealing with sort of meta materials, right, that he has studied, that he is saying are extraterrestrial.
Oh,
Take a listen.
shit.
And then Richard Van Durek from Field Propulsion Technologies. So Richard.
So I'm CEO of Field Propulsion Technologies. My background is electrical engineering and mathematics. And 40 years ago, I was involved in a company, the part owner that used to do reverse engineering.
And you shared the cloaking, which Hal's also spoken to cloaking research in another podcast, but are there others that you would share?
No, it's so I'm kind of limited. But one thing I did notice is looking at some of these materials is they were smart materials. Like one of the things is when these materials, you'd be looking at them and you try and reverse engineer them, that they would turn to dust. And they would do it within a minute or two. And then you could take the dust and then send it off and get the isotopic analysis done on them. And they were extraterrestrial. But these materials, I mean, we're looking at something that's hundreds of years ahead of us. When you look under a microscope, an electron microscope, you're looking at something that's composed of very small particles that seem to be communicating with one another. So those are the things that I've been involved in that we can talk about. But, I think that's one of the reasons why extraterrestrial materials are not really available to most people, is because most of them are set to disintegrate if they get in the wrong hand.
That's really interesting what you shared. So the smart materials that then turned to dust within a minute or two. I've heard from a number of people who have spoken to how material is terrestrial versus extraterrestrial. I've heard people share a variety of ways that you can tell that. But Richard, are you able to speak to how it was extraterrestrial versus terrestrial origin?
No, well, the isotopic analysis of the dust that's left behind tells you it's extraterrestrial, at least where it was manufactured. But so we're looking at materials that could reconfigure themselves. They are composed of small subunits. So the type of things I looked at were something as small as a sliver of metal that would reconfigure itself depending on where it was. It would cloak itself and it would try to blend into the environment. So the ones that this one NGO used to get a hold of were the ones that were technically broken. I guess the ones that didn't really function very well. So then you could collect them every once in a while and then try to analyze them. You could do things like split them apart, and they would attempt to find each other or reconfigure. Some of the experiments they did was we took one of those and we put it on a very hot surface of about 3,000 degrees. And what it would do is it cooled the surface around itself. And then when we took the device off and then weighted again, we would find that the mass would be reduced by a certain amount. So these are really curious types of materials. So that's how we could kind of tell they were extraterrestrial, because these things weren't like decades ahead of us.
Oh, no,
They were probably hundreds of years ahead of us.
Yeah, we found that they were layered alloys at the micron levels, and none of our technologists, even in the big aerospace corporations, could make these layers bond together. So just by their physical construction, we could tell it was way beyond anything that had been manufactured in our ordinary technology here on Earth.
Yeah, that's what I saw too. You were looking at the outside of a craft or materials that came from a crashed spacecraft or something?
Yes.
Yeah, so we were looking at very little things. They seem to deposit all over the world. We were estimating there's probably trillions of these things that are deposited, and they have all sorts of functions, which really kind of implies that maybe this group is actually manipulating our species. But you can still acquire those. You know where to look for them. We know how to find them.
Well, if you find a hatful, why don't you send them our way and we'll take a look at them.
Yeah, that's it. So the group I used to work with, I don't talk with anymore because they got upset at me for talking. So, but I have an idea where someone could get them.
Sounds like we've got some sources in the chat. So I think we got a number. I don't want to call out the person who's telling us sourcing, but I think we do have, I guess what you're saying, Richard, is they're ubiquitous, right? And so there's a variety of sources in terms of where to get these.
Yeah. We were assuming that they're everywhere, right? even the ones that would work, we would never be able to find because they would cloak themselves or reconfigure themselves to be something. But not all of them are functional, right?
So look, I have to admit, this episode today was one of my favorite to make and actually research and look into, because it just involves technology and whatever, physics, and it's just fun. I love science like this. Way over my head. Don't get me wrong. I don't know anything, but it's interesting. We just don't hear a lot of these stories. These aren't the ones that sort of rise to the top, right? Because everyone's focused on whatever stories, and myself included, to be honest with you. So I look forward to actually digging more into this and having more conversations like this. I've got an interview coming up. I don't want to give too many details until it actually happens, but I will be exploring these type of ideas, right, with someone who is clearly qualified to talk about it. Now, please leave your comments down below. This is just, again, absolutely insane, right? First of all, how come I've never heard of these materials that just like dissipate to dust and are clearly, they're so convinced these materials are extraterrestrial, right? That's intriguing, right? And if they can talk about it in a podcast, why can't we see some evidence or pictures, or maybe we can somehow? I don't know. If there is a way, leave a comment down below, put a link. Let's find out, help me out here, betters, right? I'll look myself, but I couldn't find anything like this related to this. So I don't know. If y'all have any ideas, let me know. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Again, I'll put links in the description. Go check it out. I highly recommend listening to this entire podcast. It is just chock full of different people kind of giving their testimonies that work in this field. And I loved it. So anyway, all right, guys, we'll see you guys on tomorrow's video. Remember, every day's a gift, y'all. Peace.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep.
That's the fun. All right. That was a dope video, Patrick. Shout out to Patrick. I'll put the link in the description. Let's see. Wait, what? Academics says 6ix9ine put him on the phone with Diddy from prison? Yeah. That's weird. Alright. Can't really do that. Let's see what Krystal and Saagar have to say about that.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Have an amazing show for everybody
today.
Loud as shit,
dude.
Indeed, we do. We're going to lead off the show with the very latest out of those LA fires. The firefighters have made some progress, but there is concerns that high winds will be kicking back up. So we'll show you the latest devastating images coming out of that great city. We're also going to take a look at Mark Zuckerberg going on with Joe Rogan, making some claims. Matt Stoller is going to be here.
He's had a change of heart. It has nothing to do with anything
very
else.
Genuine.
It's purely out of the goodness of his heart. He's realized the error of decades of his way.
Yeah, and just happens to also take great issue with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, just like Mark Andreessen when he went on Joe Rogan's show. So anyway, Matt Stoller will be here to break that down. Very interesting situation. TikTok is set to be banned. The Supreme Court heard oral arguments last week about, making the case in either direction, and they seem to be pretty divided. So very unclear the future of TikTok. So we'll break that down for you as well. Have an incredible clip from MSNBC. Mika Brzezinski still thinks Joe Biden could have won, and Joe Biden agrees, Saagar. So we've got some comments from the big man himself. I don't even know what to say about that at
The
this
big
point. I'm
man.
taking a look at the way that oligarchy contributed to these
What is
fires
the
and
fucking
many other ills
inauguration?
in our country and the world. And we're going to
Get
have
this
Derek
over
Thompson
with.
here from Atlantic Magazine. He just wrote a big piece on how what this has become, what he's describing as the antisocial century. Trends that have been
What?
in place in American life that have led to, you know, community breakdown and people really withdrawing into their homes have been accelerated both by the pandemic, but I think more in particular by our phones. And he's taking a look at what the consequences of that could be in terms of our society. Really fascinating piece, a lot of different aspects to this one. So I'm looking forward to talking to him.
Yeah, this is like all of the big social trends of the last decade, maybe even really like 2 decades, I would say. And COVID accelerated it, but it is a big crisis we talk about here, loneliness, young men, etc. But it really is just all of us. It's not about young people, it's older people as well. And the pandemic and phones, technology have fundamentally reset the way Americans spend almost all of their time. And we don't really think about it. It's not an intentional decision. And I think that he really dives into what that is and about maybe some of the things that we can do to fight back against it. Thank you very much to everybody who's been supporting the show. We appreciate you. But let's get to Los Angeles.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go ahead and put these latest images up on the screen, and I'll just give you some updates here. What you're looking at, this is incredible. This is an aerial water drop. I've seen a number of these videos, and the way that these guys and gals are able to drop the water in like the perfect location is really quite incredible. This was one of the latest fires that broke out, the Brentwood fire. This one, fortunately, the firefighters have been able to get under control. So the risk there has been eliminated. These are daredevil morons. I don't know what's wrong with them, but they're riding through the Palisades. You can see, you know, the embers flying everywhere, just trying to get a grill, and the fire is still raging. A number of these, because, you know, this wasn't just one fire, this is a number of different fires in the region, stoked by drought conditions, very high winds, high temperatures as compared to history, and you know, multiple blazes still going. Here you have firefighters who are doing their best to get these flames under control. I read there's been more than 14,000 personnel from California, 9 other states, Canada, and Mexico that have been mobilized to LA to battle these wildfires. We're also going to show you some footage later of some of the incarcerated inmates who have been part of the firefighting crew, roughly 1,000 state prisoners who have been part of the response here. These are goats that are being evacuated and brought to safety, and it's just a wild image to see them, you know, trying to be evacuated from the area with these fires blazing right there, just to show you some of the impact on wildlife as well. You know, the very latest state of affairs is they have made some progress against these blazes, which is really great to see. Some of the danger has been reduced. However, number one, you already have at least 16 deaths, and first responders are quite worried that they will uncover quite a lot more. You know, right now they're just focusing on trying to get the blazes under control. And once they go into search and recovery, there are people who are still reported missing. So a lot of concerns that number is going to increase. More than 10,000 structures damaged or destroyed. The worst 2 fires here, the Eaton fire and the Palisades fire, are the worst and the second worst fires in the history of LA County. They also are some of the worst in California history as well in terms of the level of devastation. So it just is absolutely apocalyptic. And the real concern, Saagar, is they're looking at the weather forecast and they're expecting gusts from the Santa Ana winds on the order of 50 to 65 miles per hour. That's expected to start today. The strongest winds are expected to arrive before dawn on Tuesday, peaking through Wednesday. And we know the way that those winds fueled these blazes to begin with, so a lot of concern about what those winds could potentially bring here as we move into the week.
Yeah, I was just reading this morning from the National Weather Service is not only that Tuesday exceeding 50 miles per hour combined with apparently a very, very dry air on top of the current conditions. So it's really tragic, and it doesn't look like it will end anytime soon, as heroic as the firefighters and many others have been in trying to contain the disaster. But then beyond that has been some of the bigger questions we talked about in our last show here about water reservoir, about water management, and about the Los Angeles Fire Department. And there were some big questions here at the show, and including afterwards. Did the budget actually get cut? And we believe that we have, we believe we have arrived at the definitive statement. It was cut. by some $17 million. How it got there is a little bit complicated. I'll let you explain that, but I did want to settle that for everybody before we played this clip of the LA fire chief, because there were criticisms, people saying they're trying to allay their own concerns. But it does seem that there is a shortfall of actual firefighters themselves, that this budget, immediate budget crisis didn't necessarily contribute to them not being that. It is instead indicative of the fact that Los Angeles has chronically underinvested in its public infrastructure and others, water management, fire disaster. And the big glaring question mark is, how does State Farm Insurance 8 months ago look at 70% of its coverage in Pacific Palisades and be like, yeah, this ain't gonna work. This is way too risky. We need to pull every single one of these policies. But the city itself is unable to see the exact same conditions and know that a conflagration is immediately possible in that area.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much they could do, right? I mean, the big picture here is climate-fueled catastrophes, and no state, no city is going to be able to avoid them. I mean, this is the era that we live in. But within the context of that, there's no doubt that the fire department is underfunded. Now, the budgeting piece is complicated. That's why you'll see competing narratives and a lot of certainty online in both directions. I think what is undeniable is that the department was decidedly underfunded, had lost a number of positions. They were short-staffed even on, non-firefighting positions, like the people that you need to repair the fire trucks so that they are operable, just really completely stretched thin. Their personnel numbers have dropped, even as the number of service calls have gone up by some marked percentage. So I'll get to some of those details. Our friends Ryan and Co over at DropSite are actually the ones who called the controller, said, what the hell is going on here? What are the actual numbers? What are the realities? So I'll dig into that. At the same time, the LA fire chief, Kristen Crowley, is mincing no words in her frustration about the lack of funding and the lack of resources and the constraints that they have had to operate under, and specifically expressing frustration with LA Mayor Karen Bass. Here she is on CNN sounding off on her view of the situation.
Let me be clear. The $17 million budget cut and the elimination of our civilian positions like our mechanics did and has and will continue to severely impact our ability to repair our apparatus. So with that, we have over 100 fire apparatus out of service, and having these apparatus in the proper amount of mechanics would have helped. And so it did absolutely negatively impact. I want to also be clear that I have, over the last 3 years, been clear that the fire department needs help. We can no longer sustain where we are. We do not have enough firefighters. With that, I have also requested multiple budgets, interim budgets, to show how understaffed, under-resourced, and underfunded the LAFD is.
So there you have the fire department chief herself saying, yes, the budget was cut by $17 million. We can put this DropSite tear sheet up on the screen that did. I recommend you read through it because it really goes beyond just this question of did they cut it $17 million or not. The reality is that they are facing unprecedented challenges and they are decidedly lacking in sufficient resources to even come close to dealing with it. And again, I do want to keep the focus on, there is no city, there is no mayor, there is no governor that could deal with the larger forces that made this conflagration so absolutely devastating. However, in this era, you have to be focused on what are our best chances of mitigating the impact from these climate catastrophes. So let me just read you a little bit of this article from Jessica Burbank, who did all the legwork on the reporting here. She says the LA Fire Department knew it was severely underfunded long before this fire. We don't have enough firefighters and medics. We don't have enough fire engines. We don't have enough trucks and ambulances in the field. That was an LAFD captain during city testimony at a budget hearing back last May 1st, 2024. And we don't have the equipment and staffing we need to respond to 500,000 emergency calls for service every year. Explained that demand for fire and rescue has doubled while resources have dwindled. The LAFD has fewer firefighters and medics today than we had 15 years ago, but our emergency calls for service has increased by more than 50% during that same time. Just as one more example of how this underfunding, is it's actually a long time problem, predates Karen Bass, but made worse by this most recent budget. And in the most recent budget, it wasn't just firefighting that got cut. A lot of social services got cut. The Public Works Department got cut. Homelessness services got cut. The police department got a huge increase in their budget, multi-million-dollar increase in their budget. I'll go through some of those numbers in my monologue today. But they say 86 emergency vehicles at that May date were out of commission because they did not have the funds to hire sheet metal workers and mechanics to fix them. That included 40 fire engines, 36 ambulances, 10 fire trucks, and Captain Chung Ho testified during a budget hearing, it just makes no sense to have million-dollar fire trucks and engines taken out of service and sidelined because we don't have enough mechanics to keep them running. And finally, just to put about this question about the 17 million, blah, 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 the city controller, who, oversees the budget, who also complained about how they're short-staffed and don't have accountants to handle payroll as well and are stretched incredibly thin, they also confirmed to Dropsite News, yes, their operating budget did get reduced by $17.6 million. Saagar, as best I can figure out, the reason there's confusion is because budgeting is really complicated.
Yes,
so part of what happens with these departments is they'll get a certain operating budget, and then it's just not sufficient for them to do the very basics of what they're obligated to do. They will go over budget, then additional funds will be shifted around to try to make them whole. So how do you count that? How do you count some of these one-time expenditures? Okay, well, if you spent that amount last cycle and then you're not planning on this one-time expenditure this cycle, does that count as a funding cut? So it is a little bit of a complicated picture. So I think getting away from the $17 million, the bottom line is this department is underfunded, and in an era of climate catastrophe, these are the sorts of things that really deserve our attention, resources, tax dollars, et cetera.
Well, part of why it's so absurd, at least to me, is this is one of the richest cities in the United States. It's like if you look at even these areas, Pacific Palisades and others, we're talking about multi-billions and just neighborhood level of the amount of tax revenue. Some of these people who are losing their homes are multi-millionaires, and they pay literally the highest tax rate in the United States. So how exactly can you still have budget problems? I think it's a big question. It's one of the big areas in which you really do have failed governance in a lot of these main cities, is you have this tremendous amount of wealth, and it's like, well, how exactly does this work? What are you guys doing with this money? So I think that's one question. But two is just like you said, look, we can talk climate or whatever. I don't think it's indisputable that things have been getting bad lately with Florida, with California, et cetera. We could debate exactly the extent to what. But in the era of which we at least know with some predictability that we have disasters, it doesn't seem unreasonable that we should probably be chronically investing in quote unquote firefighters and all of the, disaster mitigation technology and all of these other things. And I just keep coming back to the fact that it is clear to me that the home insurance companies, et cetera, and others have been able to predict with decent enough regularity and prescience some of the existential problems that they face. Sure, cities don't have the luxury of being able to pull coverage, but they do have the luxury of knowing that they will have to respond to that. And so clearly, what the work that needed to be done going into this for management of a large city, clearly was just not done. I also, I was looking in the past, fire has been a long time problem in the city of Los Angeles, apparently going all the way back to its founding, just because of the dry and the arid conditions, the Santa Ana winds, all the way back to the 1800s of stories of horrible fires that rip through the city. So this is not something that is unpredictable
San Francisco
per se, even in a normal environment. Now, the extent to which it has now come is really bad.
Yeah.
And, we were looking at some of the ways that it seems to have been started. In initial analysis, it seems it was a reigniting of a fire that had been put out on New Year's Eve. This is 100%.
About the Palisades
one specifically. Original Palisades fire. That fire seems to have started after it was reignited, was put out on New Year's Eve, seems to have been caused, according to local residents, by people lighting off fireworks, even though they weren't supposed to. That was put out, but the embers apparently were there, and then when the winds picked up, some 8 days later, it was able to
Can you
reignite. Seems to
imagine
have
being
happened
the
in the
person
exact
that
same
caused
place
this?
that it did whenever they were put it out some 8 days ago. So a little bit of a lesson there. I come from Texas too, where we have orders, whenever there are dry conditions, don't do any fireworks. People always do it, and this is part of the problem with that.
Yeah, so obviously the Santa Ana winds and this area being wildfire prone, that's nothing new. What has supercharged this situation and why researchers feel confident, attributing the level of devastation to climate change is because of the the nearly unprecedented drought conditions combined with increased temperatures. And then you also have, more human beings
Wait, how did that
living
line-
closer to these wildland areas, so that when they're lighting off fireworks or, whatever. And also just their houses are closer to the danger zone, where when there is a wildfire,
Wait,
they're
that doesn't look
immediately
right.
impacted, which
What
obviously
am I doing?
contributes to the devastation here. We had Gavin Newsom, who's been, taking a lot of incoming from Trump and a lot of other
what?
people, governor of California, of course, joined the Pod Save guys to talk a little bit about what Trump has been saying and his criticism of the response. Let's go ahead and take a listen to that.
It seems like you're trying to walk a very fine line here, extending an open hand to Trump as you signed your letter, but also calling him out for spreading disinformation. Is that because you have concerns that he might withhold disaster assistance when he becomes president?
He's been pretty straightforward about that. He's tried to do it in the past. He's not just done it here in California. He's done it in states all across the country.
What's the disinformation you were referring to in the letter? And what is the correct information?
Well, I mean, look, what the president-elect was saying about state water project and the Delta smelt somehow being culpable of, somehow leading to some of the challenges that we face down here was it's words. It's a salad. It's the form and substance of fog. It's made up. It's delusional. And it's a consistent mantra from Trump going back years and years and years. And it's reinforced over and over and over within the right wing. And so it's become gospel. And it's so profoundly ignorant. And yet he absolutely believes it. It's not an ignorance on his part. It's sort of an indelible misinformation that he sort of manifested.
He's referring, I think, specifically to Trump has long talked about this, forest management situation, which there isn't a lot of evidence that is what contributed. You were just laying out, like the fireworks situation, the Palisades doesn't have to do with the forest management. In addition, Newsom has actually increased by millions of dollars the amount of resources going to exactly this kind of forest management and the number of acres that are under management. So he has done the thing that Trump wanted him to do, but that, of course, won't stop Trump from saying whatever Trump is going to say and people believing whatever they want to hear. There were also some of the questions about the water management. I think some of those questions remain, why the fire hydrants were running dry. But it appears that it's simply because they were, battling these blazes that are truly unprecedented, and the strain was exacerbated by the fact that the winds were so high that the aerial drops for a while there, they couldn't operate the aerial drops, so they're relying solely on the fire hydrants. There was a loss of pressure, but from what I was reading, the reservoirs were actually, filled to capacity, and so there has been a lot of, lies being spread about that.
Well, they were filled, and then they got drained. Yeah, look, in general, what I usually see with this is, no offense, but every single time any weather event happens, we all hear about climate change, even climate catastrophe, etc. language, which is clear in terms of what the implication is. I would say electorally, that clearly is not a popular view, at least from what I can see. Most people still prioritize management or whatever. They don't want to curtail their standard of living or, whatever, join the Paris Climate Accord. So that has now moved to a place where everything has to be in terms of city. I think it can be a little bit of both. In general, there's usually like a cry for people to say like, oh, we have to figure out exactly, why this is happening. I try to take the pragmatic view of, it's clear to me that if this is going to be a problem, we should probably invest more. And it does seem it's pretty chronically underfunded, but in general, that's kind of how I see the battle lines here being drawn, is that, it's from the left, it's just climate.
Well, because
it's almost if there's,
but that's
but there's something that can be done about
this was sure.
Yeah,
and,
which is, we live in a place where we can have more water. It's by the ocean.
A lot of people on the left are the ones who were raising the problems with the fire department being underfunded and the budget being cut. But again, no city is going to be able to handle, no state is going to be able to handle this on its own. In fact, California's probably done more to try to mitigate climate change. And even as a large economy, it has to be a collective response. And so, I don't really agree with your assessment of the polling in terms of people's desire to take action in this regard. But you also have to remember that there's been a 50-year cover-up of the, the reality of climate change is ongoing. That cover-up is ongoing.
He said,
And there are a lot of very wealthy people who are quite interested in maintaining a status quo that benefits them, and are just hoping they can hire enough
I don't think
firefighters to
cover-up
mitigate
stuff
the damage
stands anymore. I mean, the truth is,
course it
everybody.
does.
No.
Well,
People know. The truth is, no, because the proposition is what? Oh, we need an all-electric future. We need to get rid of fossil fuels. This is bullshit. It's just not going to happen.
It's not bullshit.
No, people are not going to. People, first of all, don't want to do that. People are not going to do that. It's not reality in terms of the way it would happen.
But here's
the
the other
only
thing,
way it would is
Saagar,
some sort
that
of Manhattan
that's the
Project level,
reason
which
why-
again is not going to happen.
That's the reason why people on the right, rather than acknowledging that the climate change has fueled these extreme catastrophes, which could help to mount a public campaign to collectively try to address the problem, as we also do, because we've already arrived. Last year was the hottest year on record. The last decade have been the hottest 10 years. Already past 1.5 degrees Celsius increase for. We've already arrived here, so you're right. There needs to be massive investment in mitigation. But rather than doing that, the focus is on these, what happened with the fire hydrants, or, oh, it's DEI. Look, they've got a woman fire chief. That's really the problem here. And so there is a massive distraction campaign to keep people from actually grappling with the underlying causes here that are leading not just to this particular situation, but also, help fuel the devastating hurricanes that flooded and, were a total disaster for Western North Carolina and other regions that have made Florida effectively uninsurable. Like, all of these things fit together. But instead, it's DEI, it's wokeism, it's the fire department getting cut, whatever, when the bigger picture here is quite clear.
But here's the problem, is that by denying the fact that there's these articles from the LA Times where, like, the LAFD is too white, seems like a bit of an issue. It seems like a pure competence problem for me. I don't care what color or what gender.
That lady seemed pretty competent to me.
What's up?
That lady who's running the fire department seems pretty competent.
I'm not talking about her specifically. I'm talking about the fact that at a time in 2021, there literally were articles about DEI in the LA Fire Department. I think that's a problem. I think competency itself is the core for what all functions of life-saving organizations should be. I mean, I'm not going to get into specifically parsing, like, why are all these lesbians in the fire department, which appears to be like a vogue thing online. Instead, I would say, look, I don't care who you are. Can you do the job? Are we making sure the standards are there? And so that is, in my opinion, the problem is that nothing has ever comes to mitigation. And nothing
what
ever
evidence
even
do you
looks
have that any of them are not competent?
Oh, I'm not talking about that. I'm saying a culture around ensuring that we have more black or lesbian firefighters does not seem to me to comport with a culture of competency itself.
You have no evidence.
Well, what am I supposed to do? Go do a systematic study?
Yeah,
I mean,
yes, I expect there to be evidence if you make a claim.
Okay, then what evidence do you have that a pure white fire department can't do the best job? I mean, that's what I'm saying. DEI itself is a nonsensical thing that prioritizes equity for the sake of itself.
It's such a distraction, though. Like,
why is it a distraction?
How? Okay.
Yeah.
You think that if you had a man in charge of the fire department, they could have stopped the fires? Like, you have no evidence for that. You just assume that because it's a woman, she's not good at the job, or because she's a lesbian, she's not good at the job.
What I'm saying is that there has been a priority.
Such a distraction from the core problem here, which is that you have a 1,200-year drought. You have the average temperature in Calvert is 5 degrees hotter. The Santa Ana winds are nothing new. The reason it is so devastating are because of those two factors. And that has nothing to do whether there's a black person or a lesbian or a white lady or a white dude at the head of the fire department. Nothing to do with that.
What I am saying is that it is clear there was a culture in the state of California and in the LA Fire Department specifically to look at quote unquote equity over the last 3 to 4 year period. Do I think on average across all organizations, corporate, fire department, police, military, that culture competes with competency? Absolutely. Yes, I do.
Oh my God.
I am not personally indicting any of the people who are at the top of this or looking at their appearance and immediately making a judgment. I am saying, through both experience, through observation, that DEI itself is something that is generally the enemy of competence. It is on the people who are going to racially discriminate against others to prove that racial discrimination or sexual discrimination is better for competency, which is the core function.
Problem here?
That's not what I'm talking about, though. But I'm saying,
but why focus on it then if it's not that important?
Because it obviously is important.
What is the number one factor here causing these fires in Europe?
What is the number one
that
factor
led to the devastation?
of these drought conditions and wind. Of course. Okay. I'm
So
not
let's
stupid.
talk about it.
Huh?
Let's talk. Then
we just did a whole
you
thing
just
about
like
it.
dodge.
Yeah.
Oh, you know,
Yeah.
climate change, whatever. Why are these lefties so obsessed with climate change?
Well, because their
it's
solution,
the number
but
one
their
thing driving
solution
this
is the one that
devastation,
has been
driving the
electorally
Western North
rejected now
Carolina
over and
devastation.
over.
That is not true.
No,
That
it
is
is.
just simply not true. Go look at how popular the Paris Climate Accords were.
Well, when
go
Trump
look
pulled
at how
out of it, I don't
popular
remember it being
investments
some
in
big
green.
problem.
Go look at how popular investments in green energy are. But the thing is, Saagar, too, that you act like public opinion is just this static thing that just sits there and is what it is, versus something that is malleable and shapeable, and that people change their mind based on, I don't know, their home being destroyed by a climate-fueled catastrophe, whether they're here or in Western North Carolina. So yeah, I, as someone who analyzes these situations, of course I'm going to focus on the number one factor that is causing these absolute cataclysms here and around the world, and really is going to contribute to destabilizing the entire globe.
So the reason why I talk about it is I think that the way it codes, and this is what many people who talk about it are not able to do, is they are unable to communicate this in a manner which does not tell American citizens that their lives are not going to be significantly curtailed, which I think the true reality of most of this discussion is, oh, we have to get rid of cars that have too much emissions. We have to significantly curtail the way that we consume goods. We have to reduce our quote unquote carbon footprint, which means what? Which means that the price of all this stuff is going to go up, consumption itself is go down. I don't even necessarily think that's a bad thing per se. It's going to be tough in a hyper-individualistic and consumer capitalist society, which is the United States. Most of the way that this stuff is communicated is usually you're the problem, our whole society is the issue, or some imaginary wealth tax of 50% is going to change everything. It's just not.
The bulk of the emissions are from the giant corporations and the wealthy. And by the way, what is going to increasingly fuel carbon emissions is this race for AI development, which is incredibly resource intensive, which we're having no conversation and debate about. But the reality is we have the technology to be able to do this. It just requires collective, yes, large scale, federal government led collective action.
Yeah, but significantly changing the American way of life, which I think most people don't want to do.
I don't even think that's true.
But there are studies, for example, in Louisiana where they have major, there was the oil, I forget exactly, the facilities that were there. There's a good book about it, and I'm removing the name. The people there who were the most affected by the oil industry and others are the most Republican, because they are like, listen, at the end of the day, even though they're literally being poisoned by some of the things around them.
Because their livelihoods are tied to extraction.
Yeah, but their point is that it's clear to me that the left, the Green New Deal, et cetera, wants to do away with my job, and I don't trust that they're going to do
because who told them that? It wasn't the left that told them that. It was the right that told them that. It
so
was
you think that they're brainwashed, or they can think for themselves? I think that they've looked at.
I think they're right. I think they've looked at the failures of the government in the past in things like NAFTA to be able to deliver quality of life. But I mean, again, I'm not saying it's an easy problem. But how's the American way of life going in LA right now? How's the American way of life going in Asheville, North Carolina right now? How's the American way of life going in huge parts of the Gulf Coast that have been devastated by hurricanes and are going to be? How's the American way of life going in Miami, where when it rains, it just floods the whole city? So yeah, there would be a cost. There would be a transition period. But the consequences of not acting, you ignore the consequences of not acting.
Oh, I'm not ignoring.
And those are absolutely grave and dire. And instead, want to talk about there's a lesbian in charge of the fire department. Isn't that the real problem?
See,
no,
it's not
the real fucking problem.
Too, for the fact that we're talking about DEI itself, which has been pervaded through the California government. But beyond that, which is bringing it to a democratic question. People have been bombarded with propaganda since I was probably born that, everything is horrible, the sea levels are going to rise. Many of these predictions don't end up being true, which then no, but it's not, because people said, X amount of coastline was going to disappear by, 2025, didn't happen. The same, catastrophic language is being used over and over again. People don't feel or see the fact that things are changing all that much beyond hurricanes and or fires. I think we should speak pragmatically. We can both accept that there will be more fire, more hurricane, et cetera, and say, okay, so what are we going to do about that? Well, we have to invest a lot more money in this and this. We don't necessarily need to say, all electric cars are going to be driven in the state of California by 2030. Ridiculous, absurd, never going to happen in the first place. At the end of the day, it's about a consumptive mindset, which fundamentally, you're talking there about transition, that requires a lot of trust from people that their lives and their jobs and all this quote unquote just transition language was going to happen. I don't think there is any reason after the failures of COVID or after the last 5 years to say that would be competently managed or it would be one in which we should, as a vision, buy into. We have probably one of the most atomized, individualistic times in modern American history. I think there's a lot of reasons for that, and immigration being number one. But in all of that, you will not get to a point where everyone's just going to buy into this kumbaya, like, oh, I'm going to give up, 30% of my consumption for some quote unquote
You're
just
just like
transition.
making that up.
No, I'm not.
You
Because
are.
Donald Trump just
You
won the popular
completely
vote.
are, but
Who is
Saagar-
against electric vehicle
love it,
mandates?
dude.
Sorry,
Like,
what I'm
go
saying
against
you're
the Paris
making up
climate
is
accords.
the 30. You're gonna have to reduce your consumption 30%. Blah blah blah.
Well, I think
maybe
Michael
if you're like one of an Elon Musk of the world, maybe that might require some sacrifice. But I mean, what you're basically saying is we can't solve any big collective
No, I'm not saying
problem
we can't
together.
solve
Like,
it.
just
I'm
give
saying
up.
we can mitigate it.
We cannot solve any big collective problem. We're too atomized. We're too individual. So forget about it. Just let her rip and hope that you're one of the people who can afford the private firefighters when it comes for your house. Because that's the track that we're on right now, is just basically like every man for themselves. If you're rich, you can rebuild. If you're poor, like, sorry, you can't get home insurance, you're screwed. And, the fire department is being cut because billionaires don't want to pay taxes. So you're just basically have to pray that you and your loved ones are going to be able to make it.
Probably, look, I'm not defending billionaire tax levels, but don't they pay the most tax than anybody else in the state of California? I mean, that's what I'm talking about. This is a state with
What
a
percent
budget.
of their income
I have
do
no
they
idea.
pay in taxes?
Probably
Saagar?
5 to 7.
Next to nothing.
By the way, I'm
Elon
not
Musk
defending.
pays next to nothing in taxes.
I am not defending billionaire tax rates. What I'm saying is California is a G7 nation in and of itself. I think it would be G5 if it were its own independent country. So the idea it's not wealthy enough to handle this seems ridiculous to me. There are plenty of developed nations all across the world that seem to have a much better and more competent fire and hurricane disaster relief, Japan being one of them. My point is that it's clear within the context of mitigation itself, a lot more can be done. Democratically, if you want to continue to make the case for lack of consumption, etc., you can. I don't think it's going to work. I mean, I think the most honest discussion of climate change we ever had was, who was the person who made the documentary with Michael Moore? I'm forgetting the name of it. And we talked a lot about it here over at Rising. We even interviewed him. And he was the most honest person because he's like, yeah, we have to radically cut consumption. I mean, actual quiet part out loud that came from most of the people who study carbon emissions, et cetera, was what was the single most important thing for drop of carbon emissions? It's when everybody stayed at home during COVID. That's the truth. That's, if you actually wanted to see it, a dramatic cut. All of us have to stay at home, reduce our consumption, stay inside. People don't want to do that. We live in a democratic society.
It just requires, I mean, first of all, renewable energy technology has improved dramatically. In particular, solar has improved dramatically.
Yes, but how is it made? It's made in China from filthy, materials. It has a ton of emissions. The lifetime offset of a solar panel in the United States will never offset the amount that it requires to make it. This is the problem. Like, we want to make these windmills, which again are not efficient. They have 10 to 25% carrying. The most efficient power that we have is called nuclear power. Nobody wants to build it. Everyone's too afraid.
That's not true either. I mean, even the climate left has embraced nuclear. Like Greta has embraced
When's the next reactor
nuclear.
It's not going to happen.
Again, Saagar,
I'm just retarded.
Okay, so the way things are is just how they're going to be. That's your position.
Wait,
and I find that really, look, you might be right, but I have to say what I think would make a better situation where we don't have to constantly be, watching people tearfully talk about how all their possessions are lost and they've had to flee the home that they've lived in for decades and decades, and where parts of the country are just increasingly uninhabitable and where you can't be insured, and where, the only people who have a prayer of surviving in a reasonable fashion are the wealthy who can pay for the private firefighters and, rebuild even if they don't have homeowners insurance. Like, you might be right that we're too far gone to be able to deal with it. We certainly have not dealt with it to this point, but it's just not true that the technology doesn't exist. The technology does exist. What doesn't exist is the will to actually have the collective action required to try to tackle this problem in a serious way, which you're right, at this point will require a lot of mitigation, but also, rather than just letting it rip.
Like, you're telling me that we can't come up with technology that could mitigate this problem. Like, it's bananas to me that we got the smartest people in the world working on shit all the time, and nobody can come up with some sort of high-speed pumping system that gets pumped up to the top of the mountains, and then I have no idea. Sprayed everywhere? I don't know. But there is definitely a way you could get some freaking. I bet some kids could figure this shit out. Truthfully. But
and see what
it's
happens
sad.
when it's 2 degrees
Fucking
Celsius
really
and when it's
sad.
5 degrees Celsius, to actually try to, get the trends under control, because we do have the technology now.
Look, technology since the 1870s called nuclear reactor. Let
You actually want to build a nuclear reactor? Oh, I don't want that in my neighborhood. It's too unsafe and all this. And so what happens? We use bullshit, zoning regulations to keep it out. And we haven't built a new reactor in the United States since 1976. It's great that elites, people, and others are talking about how good it is. In practice, if the Federal Nuclear Regulatory Commission greenlit a reactor tomorrow, it would still probably take a decade before we were able to buy it. The story out of Georgia is extremely blackpilling for both how much it costs, for the number of community pushback. I feel like there is a democratic check on what is real and what is not. I would love to see 1,000, 1,500 reactors across this country. And then you can have as much AI, electric car, and all of that as you want. We don't have to burn a single, we don't have to have any oil, natural gas, etc. It will not happen because I know, you can see even today, this boomer fear of the reactor
Saagar, why not
is
use
everywhere.
the platform you have
I do. Nobody's been more pro-nuclear
to advocate for that, rather than just dismiss it as like, well, it's not going to happen. Let's talk about
nobody
DEI.
been more pro-nuclear than I have. I've been putting it out there, but I've also watched with trepidation and with reality about how even Diablo Canyon, bringing back on that was a titanic fight in the state of California, about how in Germany, sure, it's great, Greta said it. Well, most of the reactors are going offline. They're still burning more coal or burning Russian natural gas. Even Japan, the country I love, even the fact they had one nuclear disaster where not a single person was killed, and they basically took off a huge percentage of theirs because people are afraid. It's like dealing with this is just so maddening, because the truth is that the actual democratic check on this stuff, what I was talking about with oil or with nuclear, many people are either afraid, they can have all the facts that they want, they're just not going to listen. And in the meantime, we also have all these issues that we have to deal with, but the solutions, while they may be easy and staring us in the face, actually convincing people of that, I have not seen a correct playbook for it,
So
both
Saagar,
on nuclear or climate or any of this.
Your ideal, like if you could just Saagar gets to run the world.
It'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Your ideal would be to tackle climate change using nuclear energy.
Well, I think that at a certain point, things are mostly far
He would
gone
definitely
at this
be a
point. A
dictator.
lot of it is going to be mitigation to the extent that we can reduce further carbon emissions.
Ooh,
I would
that
build
might have been a little too
1,500
far
nuclear
out.
reactors tomorrow across the entire United States, fulfill Richard Nixon's vision of 1,000 nuclear reactors at a minimum, greenlight this, have abundant electrical power in which Americans don't have to worry about their power bills. We could build as much as we want. All the AI people can hook up to the grid. If
That's
you want an
true.
electric car, you can drive it, and we would have dramatically less.
Imagine if we just closed the borders and worried about ourselves for fucking 10 years, 5 years. I just don't get why we don't do it. I mean, hopefully that happens, but he's not right. He's not wrong, man. We go nuclear, dude. We get freaking literally unlimited energy almost. All right.
Carbon emissions. That is an abundant future,
that's
but I'm
what
realistic
excites me.
too. I
So,
don't think it's going to happen.
Listen,
Yeah.
I think that is a great direction, and I just don't know why you sneer at people who, rather than just saying well, it's not going to happen, who try to make the case for and try to hold on to a possibility that we could do something on that scale and try to actually mitigate the forces. I don't understand why you would sneer at people who are still trying to make that case.
It's not. I'm not sneering per se. It's
I like it.
It's attitudinal, because the attitudinal shift is one of which it's like people just don't. The attitudinal shift is we have to have is that all of these discussions, like you were
One
talking
sec,
about,
everybody.
DEI, et cetera, irrelevant, it's a
right
cover
back.
up, or it's the fault of,
Listen to this sweet music. Wait, what am I doing? All right, we're back, baby. Sorry about that. Had to get some drink, food, smoke a couple bugs. And I don't mean bong hits. I mean 3 bowl packs. And it was glorious. I wish I could do it on stream, but all right. Kind of sick of watching this right now. So I'll link that in the description if you want to finish that video. I'm not gonna take their whole video. All right, let's see. Jeez, fuck, man. Let's see what the enforcer has
All
to
right,
say.
good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt.
A short war video, and today we have big news. We just saw a major attack in the Bryansk region of Russia.
Storm Shadow missiles, and it was a very large attack. We saw 2 different facilities confirmed getting hit by these missiles. It was a microelectronics factory and also apparently a very crucial chemical plant, crucial to Russia's war effort, and those were struck, and we have all the video evidence to show you the multiple different angles of this attack. Also, on another front, we're hearing that Gazprom, one of Russia's largest oil companies, is preparing mass layoffs at the moment in a last-ditch attempt to save their company as economic sanctions are starting to bring it to its knees, and also these Ukrainian attacks on Russian oil are bringing that company down as well. So it sounds like it's not going good on that front. And also, speaking of oil, it sounds like some Russian ships carrying oil are not being allowed to dock in China, as apparently China is now honoring U.S. sanctions and not letting Russian oil into their country, and India is also not letting Russian oil in either. So it's not going good for Russia whatsoever on the oil front, and it's also not going good on the war front either. But with that, let's jump into our first post of the day, which goes to Anton Gierashenko. And in this post from Anton, we see that according to Russian Telegram channels, a chemical plant in Bryansk was hit by the attack, the attack we just saw a moment ago, and the plant produces industrial explosives and is involved into disposal of ammunitions, according to its website. And as you can see right here, this is an image of the plant itself on fire, and as you can see, it was a direct hit. Apparently, either Storm Shadows or ATACMS hit this exact target right here, and as you can see, the damage appears to be quite major. It looks like a very large explosion, and it's literally illuminating the entire night sky, as you can see right there. So quite some significant damage, and we've gotten other footage as well showing the missiles coming into the region and also impacting other areas as well. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into our next post here, and we're actually going to learn some more about what that chemical plant was. And as we can see right here in this post from Osent Yuri, this was the Bryansk chemical plant named after the 50th anniversary of the USSR, and it's located in Seltso in the Bryansk Oblast. So taking a look here, you can see exactly how far the strike was. It appears to be about 132 miles in distance, and it appears to be launched from somewhere in northern Ukraine, maybe around the Chernihiv area perhaps. It looks like somewhere around that spot, and it looks like they went all the way up here to Bryansk, and it looks like all those missiles impacted in various different locations, as you can see right here on the map. Also, you can see actually the plant site itself right here. This is where the chemical plant is located, and this is where the missile struck. Just to give you an overhead view of exactly how large this plant is, you can see it right there in the picture. And also to give you a little bit more information about what exactly was hit, we can see in the second post here from Osent Yuri, the primary product produced at the factory is explosives, and you can actually see the storage bunkers and the magazines located in a wooded area west of the factory. And taking a look right here, there are those magazines right over there outside of the facility itself, where apparently they store some things related to manufacturing these explosives. So apparently all of this facility was hit, not just the main part of the plant itself, but the entire facility. And of course, this was a very big loss for the Russians. But also, moving into our next post here, this one goes to Null Reporters. Not only did we see the chemical plant get hit, but also we saw a microelectronics plant get hit as well. And we see here that locals in Bryansk are reporting smoke coming from the Bryansk Kremeny L Enterprise, apparently one of the largest suppliers of military microelectronics. And according to the locals, it was hit by a HIMARS rocket, or as they call it, debris. And I will say, take the report from the local with a grain of salt, because apparently from what we're learning according to Russian military back channels, this was an attack conducted with Storm Shadow and also ATACMS missiles. So they're claiming it was a HIMARS that hit the microelectronics center, but I think it was probably not that. It was probably one of the other other two weapons instead. And I think maybe the locals are simply not familiar with the weapons, so they might have gotten a little bit mistaken about it. But as you can see right here, there is the Microelectronics Center, and that is Kremeni, the facility that was taken out right here as well. So it sounds like we're not learning the entire extent of the damage just yet. These are the two confirmed targets, this facility and also the chemical plant, but I think there were more targets that were hit as well. And once again, this is a very fresh attack about 30 minutes ago, and we're going to have to wait for some more details to come out to make sure we have the entire story. But with that, we're jumping into our next post here, and this one goes to Max24. And we actually have video footage of the exact moment the missiles came in and hit the chemical plant, which is probably the biggest target we've heard confirmed so far, is that chemical plant in Bryansk producing explosives. And we have one image here showing you the massive flash coming off that missile strike. Absolutely massive right there. We can see that in the picture. And also we have a video as well of apparently a Russian freaking out as the missiles come in and hit it. So let's take a listen. So taking a listen, you can hear the Russian panicking. And he is going crazy. Also, tons of explosions happening. It's like an apocalypse out there right now. And I'm going to go ahead and mute that. But as you can see the Russians were freaking out. Apparently, the chemical plant workers were hanging out around the perimeter of the facility when the missiles hit. And they were out there screaming, yelling, and freaking out. And also, you can see right there, it looked like hell was blazing over right there in the video. So quite crazy footage to see, and just showing you the initial moment of impact on the chemical plant inside of Bryansk. But with that, we're moving on to our next post here. And this one goes to Osen Yuri. And we have yet another video showing the ATACMS coming in and hitting the chemical plant. And also, it sounded like maybe even a cluster warhead was involved with it as well, because we heard that in the video. So let's take a look. This is a further out perspective of the strike on the chemical plant. So let's take a look at the video.
Oh man, well that could be
So as you can hear,
anti-aircraft
it's almost
fire.
like cluster munitions. Damn, look at that. So as you can see right there in the video, it looks like cluster munitions
sounded
coming
like a
in.
little
Apparently it was an
kid.
ATACMS and maybe cluster munitions being launched. We did hear that apparently 10 AFU aircraft were involved in this strike. So not only were there missiles being launched
Man,
apparently
that's
from
sad.
Ukraine, but there were also air launched missiles as well going
care
toward the
what
target.
side
So
you're
you
on,
could see
man. If
clearly
you're
in
a
that video, it looked
civilian,
like
dude,
cluster munitions being used on the
fuck,
chemical plant.
that's
And
gotta
right
be
at the very end, there was a
terrifying.
very large amount of cluster happening right there in the sky and also around the perimeter as well. So quite a large explosion, and you can see it right there. Apparently an APAM cluster warhead being used as well. But with that, we are now moving on to our next video here, and this one goes to Max24. And this is yet even a further out perspective of the explosions right here. It's almost like we're zooming out, looking at the videos here based on the perspective. But you can see here that apparently someone was having a rave inside of their house. You can see it right here in the video. So let's take a look at the disco in Bryansk happening in an apartment while the explosions were happening in the background.
That sucked.
And as you can see right there, there's a rave going on. And look, there's also a rave outside too. It looks like there's some explosions going on behind that apartment block. And whoa, and those people have no clue inside that disco rave right there in that apartment that hell is breaking loose behind them. But it is definitely breaking loose. And those people right there will find out in a minute that something is happening back there at that famed chemical plant, the 50th anniversary plant named after the USSR, a failed Soviet Union. So there you go, right there. You see it right there. They're oblivious, but they'll find out soon. But with that, we're jumping into our next post. And this one goes to PSO1. And this is actually our last video of the chemical plant being attacked, and this is yet even a further out view. Like I said, we're like zooming out here with the video footage. You can see a further out view of the attack. So let's take a quick look at this one.
Yeah, that's wicked far away.
So here is Vadim, and Vadim is looking in the distance right here, and you can see out there, there is the strikes coming in right there on the horizon. That apartment block, which we saw where the disco rave was happening, is actually way over there closer to the explosions, and this guy appears to be miles and miles away, and he's seeing it even from there. And as you can see out in the distance, there's car alarms going off right there, right down there in a parking lot. So the explosion was actually impacting quite far out, and also even this guy's car alarm is going off in this old jalopy right here, and it looks like
I can't even imagine the PTSD on the kids, dude. The fucking kids, man. There, Gaza. Man. That's so fucking sad to think. Like, how can you kill kids? Like, what?
It's just ringing out across the entire Bryansk region. So Vadim is not happy, and also Vladimir is not happy either, because this whole country is getting attacked, and it looks like the air defense isn't working, and once again, that famous debris is falling down on the targets. But with that, we are moving on to our next post, and this one goes to Osent Yuri. And not only was Bryansk being attacked, but we also got reports of explosions being reported in the area of Kerch, Crimea, and the air alerts were sounding across the region. And once again, you know what's in Kerch, that very famous Kerch bridge going right across the Kerch Strait, and that bridge has been a target of the Ukrainians for quite some time, and the Ukrainians said they were going to hit it in 2024, and we're not sure if it was the target today. We're not sure if it was hit, but we did hear that apparently the bridge was closed, and also the smoke screens were deployed from the Russians, and they went through all the defensive measures to ensure that the bridge was not going to get hit. But we're not really sure right now exactly what the damage was, but apparently right there in Kerch, which is right next to the bridge, there were explosions being reported by the locals and the military officials as well. So it looks like it could be happening, but we're really not sure just yet. We're waiting for some more confirmation about that, because once again, this attack was very, very early. But with that, we're jumping into our next post here, and this one goes to Osent Yuri yet again. And just to reiterate what weapons were used in this attack and all these attacks that we saw today, Russian sources are reporting that both land-based ballistic missiles, the ATACMS and the Neptune missiles, as well as air-launched Storm Shadow and Scalp EG missiles were used in a coordinated strike on the Bryansk region and also Sevastopol and also in Ukraine as well. So we're seeing right here that this is what the Russians are claiming was launched, and we'll wait for more confirmation on this as well, but pretty much it's guaranteed at this point. It sounds like ATACMS and also Storm Shadow were definitely used in this attack, and also maybe even the Ukrainian-made Neptune missile was used as well. So quite a wide-ranging attack and a very large one, and it looks like Ukraine's ramping up those attacks on mainland Russia yet again, which of course we're seeing very rampantly in the past couple of days. But with that, we're jumping into our next post, and this one goes to Nexta. And let's switch gears for a second and discuss the situation with Russian oil, because this situation is starting to get really, really bad, and we have been wondering how long is it going to take for the Russian oil to come to its knees, and it looks like it's already getting to that point right now, because we're hearing that Gazprom, one of the largest gas companies and oil companies inside of Russia, it sounds like they're implementing mass layoffs, or at least considering it, and the central office of the corporation Gazprom will be reduced by nearly half, putting over 1,500 employees at risk of losing their jobs. So once again, you can see the logo of Gazprom right here. This is a very, very large oil and gas company inside of Russia, and it looks like they're about to have to cut a ton of staff to try to save their company as Russian oil starts going down the toilet, and it's not a good situation for Gazprom. If that company goes under, the Russian economy could be in a very bad spot, even worse than it is now. It could go to hell and back. So that is what we're hearing right now. But moving into our next post, we get some more details about the Gazprom layoffs, which are probably coming on the horizon. Apparently, Gazprom has about 4,100 employees in the central office, which is their main location, like their headquarters essentially, and they're trying to reduce that by half down to 2,500 employees. Like I said, reducing it by almost 1,500. And the document with such a proposal by the deputy chairman of the management board was previously published by Portal 47 News, and Gazprom stated the letter is relevant, but they did not comment on the situation, which basically means this is a true report, and Gazprom is about to actually lay off that many people, which is a bombshell piece of news in itself, indicating that the Ukrainian attacks on Russian oil are working, and also the U.S. sanctions are starting to set in as well, and it looks like Russia is about to have a reckoning with that. But also, jumping into our next post here, this one goes to Nexta, and we have yet even worse news for Russia when it comes to their oil exports, because we just got word today that India, following China, will not accept oil tankers sanctioned by the U.S. over Russia, reports Bloomberg News. So this is another massive blow as well, because remember now, not only are the sanctions setting in, but now it looks like China and India are not going to accept the oil tankers coming from Russia. We just saw several oil tankers coming out of Russia to export their oil just sunk in the Black Sea the other day, and it looks like another oil tanker is adrift near Germany. So I can't emphasize enough how bad the situation is for the Russian oil industry, and a large part of Russia's economy is based on oil and also natural gas exports and things like that. So with that industry being at risk of a total collapse, that means the Russian economy is at risk of total collapse, and this situation is getting on basically a very razor edge of actually going right off the cliff of no return for the Russian economy. So with that, let's discuss the practical implications of what this is going to mean for the Russian oil tankers currently floating around in the sea to try to export their oil. And it sounds like, according to OSINT Technical, that now that the U.S. sanctions are being honored by China and India, that is leaving three major Russian oil tankers carrying about 2 million barrels of Russian oil stranded off the coast of China, according to Bloomberg once again. And the most recent U.S. sanctions package announced last week appears to have strangled Russia's seaborne oil exports. So just to give you an idea, there is one of these massive oil tankers, which is also appears to be extremely extremely rusty. Hopefully it doesn't sink like the other ones. But as you can see, here's another one of these Russian oil vessels, and there is the other one as well. These are not being allowed to dock in China, and they are stuck with the 2 million barrels of oil right now that they cannot get off their ships. This is a crisis by any means for Russia, and once again, it is a bad spot for them to be in, and it looks like Ukraine has been successful in their strategy to try to take the Russian oil down. And it seems to be, honestly, at this point, not just for the Russian oil ships, but it looks like for Russian ships in general, they're not being allowed to pretty much dock in a lot of places right now, because remember, inside of Syria, they are trying to dock at the port of Tartus to get their military equipment out and their remaining troops. Those ships are not being allowed to dock there to get the military equipment out, and now China and India are not allowing the Russian oil ships to dock either to unload oil. So it looks like all the way around, Russian ships are stuck at sea, and they either have to get back to Russia or they either have to just sit out there and just wait indefinitely. So they're in a bit of a crux right now, and they're really not sure how to get out of it. But with that, that is actually our last piece of news for the day. So I hope you found today's video informative. We had a lot of news to cover today, even on a Monday, which is our day off. So if you enjoyed the video, smack the like button first of all, and also if you've not already, subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with the news coming out minute by minute as it happens. And also, be sure to go check out our Patreon page. The link is in the description below for.
All right. That was a good video. Shout out to Enforcer. I'll throw that in the description. Let's see. What should I add? Actually, you know what? Hold on. I don't want to watch this one. He has another one that I really wanted to watch, or I think I fell asleep while I was watching it. I think it's the Epic of Gilgamesh.
The Epic of Gilgamesh.
Yeah.
Why did it make such an impact when it was just?
Dude, shout out to what's his name? Glenn, right? No. Oh my god, I'm such an idiot. Camp with Mark Gagnon. Mark.
The Epic of Gilgamesh.
All right, shout out.
Why did it make such an impact when it was discovered? What Gilgamesh would do is he would sleep with the brides on their wedding night. Enkidu. He's invincibly strong, covered in hair, and lives in the wilderness with his herd of animal relatives. And they say in some of the translations that Gilgamesh loved him like a woman.
Oh, fuck.
Gilgamesh goes and meets with an alewife, a barkeeper. Gilgamesh tells her the purpose of his journey. I'm looking for immortality. Gilgamesh rejects the advances of the goddess Ishtar. Ishtar asks her father Anu to send Gulana, the bull of heaven, to avenge her. Utnapishtim tells Gilgamesh that at the bottom of the sea lives a boxthorn-like plant that will make him young again. It's conjectured that Gilgamesh exhausts the men through tests of strength, forced labor, or building projects. Gilgamesh is 2/3 god, 1/3 man. And he's being a dick.
He's being a dick.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Religion Camp. This is the show where I'm going to explore all of the most interesting stories from religion, mythology, and all things divine from around the world of all ages. That's right, all the secret teachings. And today, we're talking about the Epic of Gilgamesh. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It might be the oldest piece of literature of all time. And today we're going to be doing a couple spoilers. So if you haven't read it yet, too late. You had 4,000 years. So catch up, okay? The Epic of Gilgamesh is an absolutely amazing story. It is the prototypical hero's journey. It'll basically show you where the idea of the hero's journey comes from. And it is a real remarkable piece of literature. Or should I say literature? Perhaps it is a true historical account of an ancient king. Probably not. But let's see, okay? Why is it so important? Why did it make such an impact when it was discovered? And what is actually possessed on these tablets known as the Epic of Gilgamesh? Let's go all the way back to 1850, all right? A couple guys were just kicking around in the desert in Iraq, in Nineveh. These guys, Hormuzd, Rassam, and W.K. Loftus. In the 1850s, they're just kind of, poking around in the sand.
They're chilling, bro.
Looking at stuff.
Looking.
And what do they find?
Touching.
None other than 15,000 fragments of Assyrian cuneiform tablets. Now, cuneiform is an interesting little way of writing. Basically, you take these clay tablets and you press into it, like some little indents. And based off the indents, you basically are able to spell out letters. From these letters, you're able to spell out an awesome story. And what was on these tablets? It was the Epic of Gilgamesh. And this is a 4,000-year-old piece of literature that basically rocked the world. This was like the Game of Thrones of their time. Everyone was going buck wild for this thing. People were trying to read it nonstop. They found many different versions from all different places, all in the same region. And it had a real chokehold on the people. And that's why you have so many different kind of like names and name translations. And they're kind of written in subtly different languages. Some of them are incomplete, like the old Babylonian versions. There's only certain fragments where they couldn't actually complete the whole story. So the version we're going to be going through today is the standard Babylonian version. This is like, I don't know, the Bible. They got different versions of it. So you got to make sure you got the right translation. This one doesn't have all the ye's and stuff. This is just the standard Babylonian version. This is basically an interpretation or translation from a good man named Andrew George. Shall we begin? The story begins by introducing Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk. Gilgamesh is 2/3 God, 1/3 man. It's a pretty solid little ratio there. And he's being a dick. He's oppressing the people of his kingdom, and they cry out to the gods for help. This was Gilgamesh's little thing right here. Okay, again, this guy is a king of Uruk, and the young woman of Uruk. What Gilgamesh would do is he would sleep with the brides on their wedding night. That was like his little kink. That was his thing, right? That was like you would go around and find people getting married, and if you saw Gilgamesh, bad news.
That's right.
That's what it was, dude. Gilgamesh was a real scumbag. And so all the men of Uruk, and it says in this part of the sort of in translation, the tablet is damaged at this point. So we don't know what the young men were saying. I'm assuming they're saying like, yo, stop smashing my girl. That's probably more or less what the vibe was. Hey, can you stop dogging out my sweet baby? We don't have the exact translation, but that's Mark's translation. It's conjectured that Gilgamesh exhaust the men through tests of strength, forced labor, or building projects. These are all very different things. I don't like that they just put them all in there. Like, yeah, these, he would exhaust them through games, tests of strength, slavery. Like, that's, all right, that's not at all. But yeah, he would make them do like a Sudoku, or they would be a slave for a long time. All right, that's extremely different things. But regardless, he would basically get the men out of the picture, okay? And then he would have his way with their sweet brides.
Play cards.
So the gods responded to the people's pleas by creating an equal to Gilgamesh who would be able to stop his oppression. This is how we get Enkidu. Enkidu is a legend. He's an absolute wild man. He's invincibly strong, covered in hair, and lives in the wilderness with his herd of animal relatives. So this is like the first part where the sort of Epic of Gilgamesh starts to have comparisons to the Abrahamic religions, as people would say. As we know, if you're a Muzzy, if you're a Jew, if you're a Christiani, we believe that Adam was made from clay. That's how God formed him initially. Enkidu, in this very early story, ostensibly older than the original penning of the Old Testament, was also made from clay. So people would point to that and be like, "Oh, that's an interesting similarity." Who knows? Maybe they just are all drawing from the same source material. You know what I mean? Who's to say? Here's a little sculpture of Enkidu. This guy looks absolutely insane. Diesel on all these pictures. Why is old mythological art so gay? Like, all these guys are just jacked. I mean, the crazy V lines. I mean, this makes me uncomfortable. Now, Enkidu is a wild man. He was out there. He got made by the gods to go take down Gilgamesh. That is his one job. The gods literally say to him, "Hey, we're going to make you out of clay, put you with some animals in the wilderness, go just F up Gilgamesh." He goes, "All right, bet. No problem."
Bet.
He is spotted by a trapper. Not like a drug dealer, but like like an actual guy that traps animals. And his livelihood is being ruined because Enkidu's destroying all his traps. The trapper tells the sun god Shamash about the man, and it is arranged that Enkidu will be seduced by Shamhat. This is known as like a prostitute. All right, she's a hooker.
Oh shit!
That's basically the best way to put it. And her job is to tame him. That's how it's written in the text, to tame him, which is kind of wild. Like, this is how crazy this guy is. He's just got berries growing out of his beard, and they're like, all right, can you just reel this guy in? Can you fix him? This is your little project, all right, Shamat? You gotta
fix him.
You gotta make this guy not be such a degenerate. This is like when a cute girl like starts dating like just a frat guy. They're like, look, he is just beer boxes on his walls. Like, can you just make him a civilized human being? So after 6 days and 7 nights of lovemaking, Enkidu is weakened.
Oh fuck!
That's what it says. This is on. This was buried with the kings of the time. This was in their actual.
It's like
burial chambers.
Those dirty books.
They were like, this story is awesome.
Middle-aged women.
6 days and 7 nights of banging it out. Enkidu is weakened. His herd flees in horror, and Enkidu is shocked by his loneliness. But Shamat tries to comfort him. She says, do not grieve. You now have knowledge like the gods. Then she takes him to the shepherd's camp, teaches him to be civilized, cuts his hair. This is basically like Princess Bride. I don't know, Princess Diaries. Yeah, Princess Diaries. This is where they take like the girl with the fuzzy hair and then they make her not ugly anymore. Which is like it's the best. You just like take a girl with glasses, like, you're so ugly, take her glasses off. You're like, you're a princess? So that's basically what they do with Enkidu. He's just wearing glasses and they take him off. They're like, wow, I guess you're just like a jacked, handsome guy. They cut his hair. He learns to eat human food and drink beer. This guy's so chill. I mean, what a week for him, right? Hanging with all his animals in the woods. Gets just like, I guess he's getting assaulted for 7 nights. I don't know. It seems like he gets weakened. I don't know if he even likes it. He's just getting absolutely just rode to smithereens. Just getting absolutely grinded up by a Shamhat. And it doesn't seem like he's stoked on it. Loses all his friends and then learns about beer. I mean, this is just a freshman, dude. I don't know. A college freshman, a guy freshman. All right, don't make it weird. So imagine this. All of a sudden, we're seeing Enkidu's whole side. He's having this insane day. He's getting dogged out, bent over, tied up, drinking beer. Gilgamesh, meanwhile, is having dreams about a brand new friend, a new buddy that he's going to kick it with from all time.
Oh, no.
Seems kind of weird. We know Enkidu's trying to kill Gilgamesh. That's the whole story.
Yeah, I think Enkidu's
Fast forward, tablet 2, the shepherd's camp. To those who have been accustomed, Enkidu is appointed night watchman. Learning from a passing stranger about Gilgamesh's treatment of the brides, he's incensed and travels to Uruk to intervene at a wedding. This is where these two guys finally face off. Gilgamesh attempts to visit the wedding chamber. We don't like that. Enkidu blocks his way, and they fight. This guy is a proper white knight. He's like, yo, you're not going to dog out this guy's wife, all right? You got to stop it. And Gilgamesh is like, I'll do whatever I want, dude. I'm 2/3 of a god. And Enkidu's like, no. After a fierce battle, Enkidu loses.
That's true.
Like, he's sent by the gods. You go just F up Gilgamesh, and he can't do it. Literally, he's like, stop. And then Gilgamesh is like, no. And this is the part that's crazy to me. 1941, Hitler took command of the German army. 1997, Titanic premiered in the theaters. 1777, George Washington led troops into the winter quarters of Valley Forge. There's all these explanations for everything that's going on in our newsletter. That's right. That's where I learned all this. You go on a first date and you're talking to a girl. You're like, hey, did you know 1941, Hitler took over Germany today? Whoa. And she's probably gonna be like, that's you. You're an awesome guy. You could be the most interesting person on every date, get laid easier, and make more friends if you subscribe to the newsletter. And not only that, I'm sure you've seen I've been wearing merch. I've been wearing sick, brand new merch on episodes of Flagrant. I'm sitting right next to 50 Cent in this picture right here, wearing brand new merch. Everything that's going on in the camp world, in my world, and in our world is going on in the newsletter. S'more Camp. Click on the link in the description below. Camp. I'll see you there. Let's get back to the show. Gilgamesh just beats him up, crushes him, not even that hard. It doesn't really say exactly how, but you got to imagine Gilgamesh is like pretty horny. He's walking into the room, probably rock hard, and then has to fight a guy just bricked up.
That's
and
true.
Then the craziest part, they become friends. I don't know if you've ever gotten your ass beat, right? Like a guy with a rock hard boner is fucking you up, and all of a sudden he's like, yo, we're good? And you're like, yeah, we're good. That's crazy. Like, that's
pretty crazy.
I think this is obviously fiction at this point. And they become friends, and then Gilgamesh out of nowhere goes, hey, remember when I just beat you up my dick out? You want to go to the forest and kill a demon?
What?
And Enkidu's like, yeah, let's do it. What's good with this demon? And he's like, it's Humbaba. He's living out in the woods in the cedar forest. And if we can kill this guy, we're gonna get unknown praise. will be world renowned guys that kill demons, I guess. That's like their whole vibe. So fast forward, these two guys, all right, are now besties after fighting. This is basically Brokeback Mesopotamia. The two basically go out in the woods, and Gilgamesh visits his mother, Ninsun, and seeks the support and protection of the sun god Shamash for their adventure. Ninsun adopts Enkidu as her son, and Gilgamesh leaves instructions for the governance of Uruk in his absence. Now, again, you got to wonder, Gilgamesh, he's an actual bad guy. This is not a good human being, right? And meanwhile, his mom is just watching all of this happen, like, oh, that's my boy, just banging all the new brides. Like, this is like insane. Like, where is she? Like, what a? It's because he doesn't have a dad, probably.
No, I think it's just a different.
I don't want to speculate. If you don't have a dad, it's not your fault. All right, I'm not going to judge you. But it's like, where's this whole family unit? This whole thing just seems unstable. Right? Like the mom is just letting this happen. She has no words. Like, by the way, can you not do that? I don't know. This just makes me uncomfortable. You don't like to see that bad parenting where they enable their kid. Anyway, this is the side part. Gilgamesh and Enkidu journey into the cedar forest. Every few days, they're camping on the mountains. They're performing a dream ritual. Gilgamesh has 5 terrifying dreams about thunderstorms, wild bulls, falling mountains, and a thunderbird that breathes fire. Apparently, he knows that there are major similarities between all of these dreams and the earlier descriptions of Humbaba, this demon that they're trying to kill. He tells Enkidu, he's like, bro, I had these insane dreams. And Enkidu's like, dude, these dreams are actually good. But just like an absolute ride or die kind of hum. He's like, dude, that terrible stuff you're thinking, it's actually sick as hell. So they say like the dreams are fine, and then they deny that the frightening images represent the forest guardian, Humbaba. As they approach the Cedar Mountain, they hear Humbaba bellowing and have to encourage each other not to be afraid. All of a sudden, he's a little scared, this guy that just takes everyone's girl. All of a sudden, he's a little, fuck Gilgamesh, bro. I'm over it with this guy. It's annoying, right?
Gilgamesh is a bitch.
Whatever. The heroes enter the cedar forest. Humbaba, the guardian of the cedar forest, he insults them and threatens them. It's funny that they put both things because they did not have to put the insult part, right? Like, if you're getting attacked by a demon, you're not going to be like, dude, he was scratching me and also calling me a bitch. Like, no, I was getting attacked by a demon. But they include that. Just
calling
that
me
way
a
you
bitch.
know.
And then he hit me in the face, man.
With the demon. I don't want you to be reading this and be like, oh, Gilgamesh really went off the rails. No. They pulled up on Humbaba for no reason. Remember this. They showed up to his house. And then Humbaba was starting to throw insults. And then they're like, whoa. You trying to diss us right now? You calling us pussy right now? This whole thing's crazy. Anyway. He accuses Enkidu of betrayal and vows to disembowel Gilgamesh and feed his flesh to the birds. Gilgamesh is afraid, but with some encouraging words from Enkidu, the battle commences. The mountains quake, the sky turns black. The god Shamash sends 13 winds to bind Humbaba, and he's captured. See, Gilgamesh couldn't even take Humbaba by himself. Also, that's an insane name, Humbaba. It's an awesome name. That's going to be a middle name for one of my little daughters, probably. Humbaba pleads for his life, and Gilgamesh pities him. He offers to make Gilgamesh the king of the forest. He'll cut down trees for him. He'll be a slave. Enkidu is like, no. Gilgamesh, let's kill Humbaba. Let's kill him. Now we're going to establish our reputation forever. Humbaba curses them both, and Gilgamesh dispatches, I'd like it says dispatches him. He kills him. He rocks him in the head, below the neck, and basically just kills him right away, as well as his 7 sons. Seems completely unnecessary. Like, this whole thing. Also, for the record, I'm pretty sure in like some of the original translations, Humbaba's not really doing anything. Like, sometimes they don't really even describe him as like a demon. Sometimes they describe him as like a demigod. That he's just like a powerful guy in the cedar forest, like kind of is a guardian of the forest. So Gilgamesh and his homie pull up looking for trouble out of nowhere, shows up, kills him, kills his 7 sons, and we're like, dude, Gilgamesh is a hero. I know, we're getting to the part where things actually make more sense, but it's just crazy. So far, this guy is just a thug. He's just a bad dude. The two heroes then cut down many cedars in the forest, including a gigantic tree that Enkidu plans to fashion into a gate for the temple of Enlil.
What a dick.
They build a raft, return home to the Euphrates with a giant tree, and potentially, depending on how you interpret the text, the head of Humbaba. So far, this whole thing is insane. Right, like these two guys, they're like homies, major bromance. They fight, like they're beating up guys that they don't like. That seem kind of like unnecessary, you know. But we move on to tablet 6. Gilgamesh rejects the advances of the goddess Ishtar, kind of out of nowhere. Okay, we go right into tablet 6. And Gilgamesh, he's the homie. He just beat up this guy. He's just like chilling, like just in the cut. All of a sudden, the goddess Ishtar is like, yo, give me that. Let me hop on. And she's kind of a piece. You look at these old sketches, you're like, all right. Sometimes she's known as Inanna, depending on the translation. But in the Assyrian translations, known as Ishtar. When you start looking at Ishtar, you're like, dude, potentially could get it. I don't know if this is I don't know if anyone still believes this. If this is your religion, like if you're like, no, I'm a Gilgameshian, I just want to apologize ahead of time. I feel like I'm being disrespectful so far. I don't think anyone believes it, so I think we're fine.
Yeah, I think that's been.
If you're in the comments, if there's any Sumerians listening, just, my bad. Ishtar gets pissed off.
My bad.
Ishtar's like, yo, why can't I hop on at one time on a Thursday? And Gilgamesh is like, yo, you mistreated other people like Dumuzi, who's like just a shepherd that got like disrespected by Ishtar. And Gilgamesh is like, I'm not playing with that. Go away. Ishtar becomes angry and denies Gilgamesh entry into Iana, interfering with his business. Ishtar asks her father, Anu, to send Gulana, the bull of heaven. This is an important note. The bull of heaven to avenge her. When Anu rejects her complaints, Ishtar threatens to raise the dead, who, quote, will outnumber the living and devour them.
Actually need to get
Seems
rid
like
of
this is a lot for just getting turned down one time. Right? Like, I don't know. Women are emotional. I get it. This is like the first incel. You know what I mean? Like this girl gets turned down. She's like, oh, you're going to turn me down? What if I raise all the dead and devour everyone that's alive? It's like, all right, you're crossing the line here. Apparently the dead will scream so loud that it'll be heard by the heavens and the earth. Her dad hears this and he's like, all right, just stop. Anu states that if he gives her the bowl of heaven, Uruk will face 7 years of famine. So this is like insane checks and balances. She's like, I'm going to raise the dead. He's like, look, I want to give you the bowl, but all of a sudden all the people of this kingdom are going to starve for 7 years. What do we do? So Ishtar provides him with provisions for 7 years in exchange for the bull. Ishtar is like, all right, fine. Leads the bull of heaven to Uruk and causes widespread devastation. This bull is just going wild. All right, let's try to get a picture of this bull right here. Yeah, it's a bull. No, I don't know. I was expecting something a little scary. I guess it's like giant or something. This bull of heaven comes down. He's pissed off and he's insatiably thirsty. That's right.
Oh, man.
The bull comes down and causes widespread devastation, lowers the level of the Euphrates River, dries up the marshes, and opens up huge pits that swallow 300 men. Without divine assistance, Enkidu and Gilgamesh kill him and offer up his heart to Shamash. Ishtar, at this point, as you can imagine, is fucking pissed. She's like, you turn me down. I get my dad to send the bull of heaven. You kill the bull of heaven. Which I was like, Ishtar, what did you want to happen? Oh, just destroy the whole town. Like, you get turned down. You get rejected. That's on you. Shave or something. I don't know. Like, and then you get mad when like your revenge plot doesn't work. Fuck out of here. The city of Uruk celebrates, but Enkidu has an ominous dream about his future failure. It's kind of ominous, right?
It was ominous.
In Enkidu's dream, the gods decide that one of the heroes must die because they killed Humbaba for no reason. In my opinion, I'm a Humbaba like loyalist. Like, yeah, that was
Humbaba
say his name,
stand.
Humbaba. That's what I believe. And the bull of heaven. Both those. The bull of heaven, that one, he's like a hired gun. I don't really care as much about the bull of heaven. But regardless, because they both die, Enkidu has this dream that one of the heroes must be killed. Despite the protesting of Shamash, Enkidu is marked for death. That's right. The gods get together. They're like, Enkidu, you got to die. Enkidu curses the great door he has fashioned for Enlil's temple. He also curses the trapper and Shamhat for removing him from the wild. Shamash reminds Enkidu of how Shamhat fed and clothed him and introduced him to Gilgamesh. Shamash tells him that Gilgamesh will bestow great honors upon him at his funeral and will wander into the wild consumed with grief. Enkidu, like, basically just spiraling. He's just like, yo, fuck this, fuck you, fuck that guy, you're cool, fuck, like, he's just like pissed off and he's just going off on everybody. And then he's like, all right, my bad. I got a little word there. Enkidu regrets his curses. And then he blesses Shamhat instead. And then he has a second dream where he's taken captive to the netherworld, a house of dust and darkness whose inhabitants eat clay and are clothed in bird feathers, supervised by terrifying beings. For 12 days, Enkidu's condition worsens. Finally, after a lament that he could not meet a heroic death in battle, Enkidu dies.
What?
Now, it's kind of interesting because on the one hand, you're like, oh, why would they punish Enkidu, right? Like, he's not really the aggressor in this whole scenario. You know, it seems like Gilgamesh is the one that's kind of ruining everything. He's banging out the brides. He's not banging Ishtar, right? It's like, dude, you're banging everyone's wife. And then the one woman that's like, hey, I'll have sex with you. He's like, whoa, I'm not just a slut. He's like, I'm not just giving it out to anybody.
I know, what the
like,
fuck?
if I'm Ishtar, I actually would makes... She's kind of an incel, but on the other hand, I see her point because she's like, you're literally giving out to everyone. You're putting out to everyone else.
Yep.
And not me. I would be pissed. I don't know. I see Ishtar's point. On the other hand, you're not entitled to anyone. You know, you're not entitled to sexual favors, even if someone is promiscuous. So Ishtar's got to eat that, but on the same time, if I'm Ishtar's friend, I'm like, yeah, fuck that guy. Gilgamesh. Whack-ass name, anyway. But people are like, okay, why would Enkidu die? Because it seems like he's not causing all this stir. He's not causing all the problems. So why is he the one that gets taken out? It's interesting. I didn't really think about it this way until it was pointed out to me. Enkidu's death is not necessarily a punishment to Enkidu, right? It's more of a punishment to Gilgamesh because that is his closest friend. They say in some of the translations that Gilgamesh loved him like a woman. Look it up. And that's what it says. This shit is gay, dude. Straight up, these two guys were dogging each other out. Tales old as time. Just two bros meeting the final end of brodom, of bromance. And just being like, yo, I just love you, dude. Just getting drunk with your homie at the bar. Yo, I love you. You're my brother. I would kill a demigod in the woods for you. You know what I mean? Like that type of vibe. They just get on it immediately. They become absolute homies. So by killing his homie, you're really punishing Gilgamesh. And on top of that, I don't think the gods can kill Gilgamesh because he's like 2/3 of a god, and I think Enkidu is like not. I think he's a different. He's a different sort of calculation of god to human ratio. I don't know the exact details. I could look it up, but I don't really care. Anyway, just a good point that this is really a punishment to Gilgamesh. In a famous line from the epic, Gilgamesh clings to Enkidu's body.
Man,
he holds on to
anybody on the stream
and denies that he has died until a maggot drops from the nose of a corpse. I'll be honest, the death of Enkidu is actually
since it was
beautiful.
on like 11 minutes.
Again, this is actually where it gets interesting because you're reading like, I don't know, a 4,000-year-old piece of literature, and the emotions and sort of Gilgamesh's realization of death and his own mortality and what it really means to mourn someone that you love is actually beautiful. Like, you could cry reading this entire passage. I'll share you just a couple lines I thought were amazing. The very end of this sort of moment where he's like holding his dead friend and doesn't want to believe that he's dead. He says this: all the people of Eridu weep for you, Enkidu. Those who brought grain for your eating mourn for you now. Who rubbed oil on your back mourn for you now. Who poured beer for your drinking mourn for you now. Pour one out for the homies. Respect. The harlot who anointed you with fragrant ointment lament for you now. The woman of the palace who brought you a wife, the chosen ring of advice, lament for you now. And the young men, your brothers, as though they were women, go, long hair, in mourning. What is the sleep which holds you now? You are lost in the dark and cannot hear me. I mean, it's actually beautiful. Like, it's written in like an amazing, like, it's, and apparently it like rhymed. It had like a certain specific type of like A, B, A rhyme scheme in the original Akkadian. It's just beautiful. You actually read it and you're like, oh wow. And this is a turning point in the story. This is the moment that Gilgamesh fully realizes that he's a human being, that he can die, that he's not purely a god, that he's not destined to, you know, roam in the heavens forever, that his time will come. And this has a major effect on Gilgamesh. And as he's delivering his laments for Enkidu, he calls upon everyone in the universe and all the plants and trees to mourn his friend. He recalls their adventures together. He tears his hair and his clothes in grief. He gets a statue built for him. He gives gifts to his treasury to ensure Enkidu has a favorable reception of the realm of the dead. A great banquet is held where treasures are offered to the gods in another world. Like, this has taken a toll. And if you've ever lost someone in your life, even if it's a friend, family member, you know, that feeling of loss, the pain that you feel, is maybe the most human feeling you could ever feel, as it's written in literally the oldest piece of literature ever found. So what happens to our hero Gilgamesh? He's had this moment where he's changed forever. Tablet 9 opens with Gilgamesh roaming, wearing wild skins, grieving for Enkidu. Now, afraid of his own death, Gilgamesh decides to speak with Utnapishtim and learn the secrets of eternal life. Why does he go to Utnapishtim? Well, Utnapishtim and his wife are the only couple of humans artificially created by the gods who were allowed to survive the great floods. So, this is again where people draw some, you know, parallels with the Bible and the Abrahamic religions.
Really?
Gilgamesh
Wow.
crosses a mountain pass at
Wonder
night
how
and
they
encounters a
could come
pride of
across a
lions. Before
coincidence
sleeping,
like
he
that.
prays for protection to the moon god. Then, waking from an encouraging dream, he kills the lions and uses their skins for clothing. After a long and perilous
why'd I
journey,
do that?
Gilgamesh arrives at the twin peaks of Mount Mashu and the western end of the earth. He comes across a tunnel of the sun god Shamash, which no man has ever entered, guarded by two scorpion monsters who appear to be a married couple. That's a detail that I don't know even really what that means. How do you know these scorpions are married?
Yeah, that's
Why can't
weird.
they just be two regular,
That is odd. Huh?
different gendered scorpions?
Must be just a translation
Like,
error.
I need to figure out why they're like, no, they're obviously they're married. Like, they were just arguing the whole time. He was like, "Where do you want to eat?" She was like, "I don't know." Like, they're just standing at the gates. The husband tries to dissuade Gilgamesh from passing, but the wife intervenes, expresses empathy for Gilgamesh, and allows his passage. Entering the tunnel's gates, he follows the path of Shamash in total darkness and manages to reach the eastern exit within 12 double hours. So 24 hours. Just before he would have been caught up by the sun god, burning him alive. Astonished, he enters the marvelous garden of the gods, a paradise in which trees full of delicious jewels grow. Gilgamesh goes and meets with an alewife, a barkeeper, the wife of a brewer. Her name's Siduri. And she's in her pub, just hanging out, doing her thing. And at first, she assumes that he would be a murderer or a thief because of his disheveled appearance, but Gilgamesh tells her the purpose of his journey. I'm looking for immortality. She attempts to dissuade him, just to say, hey, be happy, but sends him to Urshanabi, the ferryman who will help him cross the sea to see Utnapishtim to gain immortality. Gilgamesh, out of a rage, destroys the stone charms that Urshanabi keeps with him. Gilgamesh tells his story, but when he asks for help, Urshanabi informs him that he's just destroyed the objects to help them cross the waters of death. Gilgamesh, you absolute idiot.
Wow.
You
What a dumbass.
destroyed the thing that's going to get you across. He's sabotaging his
Why
own
is he
self
so
because he can't
stupid?
control his emotions over and over again. Gilgamesh,
I mean,
you
I
absolute
self-sabotage too, but
moron.
I'm not that fucking
So
bad.
maybe the best quote from the entire epic of Gilgamesh comes from Siduri as she's standing there and she tries to explain to Gilgamesh that he should stop on his quest to find Utnapishtim and, gain immortality and live forever and be sort of, known as a god across the lands. This is what she says. Now, Gilgamesh, let your belly be full. Be happy day and night. Of each day, make a party. Dance in circles day and night. Let your clothes be sparkling clean. Let your head be clean. Wash yourself with water. Attend to the little ones who hold your hand. Let a wife delight in your embrace. This is the true task of mankind.
God damn. That is
There you
deep.
have it. 4,000-year-old
fuck.
wisdom. Basically to say, hey,
That is the meaning of
tend your
life.
garden. Dance,
Yeah.
drink a little, take care of your kids. They say the true delight of your embrace with your wife is little
Well-
romance. Cracking open your wife every now and again. That's basically what it's saying.
Whoa.
And it's interesting, even just saying wife is like, yo, like take care of your wife, tend to your wife, not to say, you know, Gilgamesh, find a girl and have sex with. Like it's about the divine bond between two people that have devoted their
Guaranteeing he
lives
just
to each other.
ignores her, right?
It's kind of interesting, right? Like as human beings change, time goes by, like all of this advice would still hold up, right? Like you'd be
Hell
some
yeah.
dude trying to, you know, raise $1 billion for some tech startup, and you go to like some old wise dude, and you're like, oh, what do I do? And they'd be like, hey, just be happy, day and night.
Yep.
You know, party, dance in circles at nighttime, clean yourself, wash yourself, like take care of your body, take care of your kids, hold on to the, you know, little ones who hold your hand, and just be good to your wife. Enjoy time with her. This is really what it's all about. It's like super profound. You read this and you're like, this is amazing. Like, yeah, that's exactly what we all should be doing. And even then they had this concept of like, yeah, this is what, you know, life is all about. So Gilgamesh hears this and he goes, all right, I'm still going to go see Utnapishtim and gain immortality, because he doesn't want to die. He's terrified. He just saw his friend Enkidu die. He's like, I don't want that. All right, I'm going to live forever. Don't even worry about it. Urshanabi basically says, all right, cut down 120 trees, fashion them into punting poles. When they reach the island where Utnapishtim lives, Gilgamesh recounts the story, asking him for help. Ushnapittnam reprimands him, declaring that fighting the common fate of human is futile and diminishes life's joy. Again, just a beautiful kind of look at the ancient view of mortality. Like, hey, you're not going to live forever. Trying to fight this is an absolute fool's errand. Just accept it. Especially now, you see a lot of people in the transhumanist movement that are all about like, hey, let's just live forever. And even 4,000 years ago, they're like, hey, this is, you get one shot, you get one go around.
Fucking ember from the
and who knows how
ashtray
long
just
it
went
is.
down. Oh,
40 years, 50 years, maybe 100 if you're feeling nice.
holy
Just
shit.
enjoy it. Take care of your kids. Live. Gilgamesh observes the Utnapishtim.
All right, hold on. How close am I? Oh, Jesus. All right. Oh, hold on. Sorry. Let me just go on break. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. I think I'm gonna call it for tonight. Did actually a lot on this. This is coming out so sick. I just burned a fucking hole in literally right in the carpet. All right. I'll see everybody later. Peace. Oh.